In the 1980s and 1990s, there were plenty of well-known animated TV shows that are still remembered to this day. Everybody talks about He-Man, Thundercats, Voltron, G.I. Joe, Transformers, X-Men, Spider-Man, Sonic Saddam, SWAT Cats, Gargoyles, etc. The list goes on and on, but there are a few shows that I remember that seem to have been left in the shadows. One of those shows I want to talk about is the short-lived Warner Brothers cartoon called Road Rovers. This was one of my favorite shows as a teenager, and in my humble opinion, Road Rovers is one of the most memorable American cartoons from the 1990s. Sure, the series wasn't that special to the company that made it, but from what I understand, it created a generation of fans around the United States since its initial airing, which still holds up today despite that the series has faded into obscurity. Now, for those of you who have forgotten about the show, allow me to refresh your memory. Road Rovers first aired on Kids WB on September 7th, 1996. It ran in syndication with other Warner Brothers cartoons that aired at the time. Like most Warner Brothers cartoons of the time, it was a comedy that consisted mostly of original jokes, gags, and slapstick humor. In fact, much of the humor contained in the show was derived from the popular culture of the mid-90s. The show also had a nice blend of action, romance, fantasy, and science fiction in its originality, which made it even more unique and special to the fans. Unfortunately, despite its cult following, Road Rovers didn't last for long. Due to either negative bashing from critics, poor ratings, or possibly both, it lasted only one season and only 13 episodes were ever produced. The show ended on February 22, 1997, and reruns continued to air on the same network until September of 1997. The show was then brought over to Cartoon Network, where it ran for 2 more years until the year 2000, when it was permanently canceled and taken off the air, and it hasn't been seen on television ever since. Most people have moved on, but loyal fans continue to keep a sense of hope that maybe someday the show will make a dramatic comeback, however unlikely that may seem. Now I'd like to take this time to go over my memories and overall experiences regarding this underrated yet classic American cartoon, which I still believe has a lot of potential to be so much more than it was given credit for. The show revolved around a team of 5 superhero humanoid dogs. They started off as ordinary canines who were brought together as a team by a scientist known as Professor William F. Shepard, who is commonly referred to in the series as the Master. Upon arriving to the professor's underground laboratory, the 5 canines are transformed into their humanoid forms and are provided with their signature uniforms along with the ability to speak.
This is how we say it in Siberia, totally neato!
In this show, anthropomorphic canines are referred to as Kano Sapiens. Along with their humanoid forms, they were also given unique special powers, weapons, and vehicles needed to combat the threat of the villainous General Parvo, who prior to the team's formation, stole the technology from Professor Shepard to use for his own purposes. He uses it to transform enslaved dogs into obedient bestial minions called Kano Mutants. Unlike the Road Rovers, the Kano Mutants are mute and without free will or conscience of their own. Because they have no will to resist, Parvo makes them his slave army to enforce his will and authority. As a team, the Road Rovers fought against not only General Parvo, but numerous other villains who posed an equally significant threat to the world. Back when I first saw the commercials for the show, I originally thought to myself, Road Rovers? What's the show about? Alien anthro dogs from outer space? Of course, I was only part right when I assumed that they were anthropomorphic dogs, but I was totally wrong when I assumed that they were aliens from another world. Because as I further watched the show and got to know the characters more, I learned that the Road Rovers are not aliens, but rather they're from Earth like ordinary human beings. So anyway, Road Rovers, in my honest opinion, was a very unique and original show that had a lot of potential for tremendous expansion and further development. And I always believed that the series could spawn a wide range of popular media, along with having a whole merchandise of its own, had the series been promoted in such a manner. After all, it was made by one of the most well-known and successful animation companies in the world. In my point of view, Road Rovers was like X-Men, TMNT, Mask, and the Super Sentai genre with a canine twist. The influences were undeniable, and this is only one of the reasons why Road Rovers is one of my favorite American cartoons of all time. The characters in the show were lots of fun. Of course, fans are most crazy for the main heroes, which is perfectly alright since it's usually the main characters who receive the most attention and recognition in a franchise. In this review, however, I am not only going to talk about the main characters, but I will also discuss some of the minor and lesser known characters in the show. First, there's Hunter, a golden retriever mix from the United States. He's the leader of the team and possesses adequate leadership skills. Unlike most leader figures, however, Hunter has a bit of a cheerful, easygoing, and carefree personality. He is also characterized by having a courageous, fearless, and somewhat cocky attitude. His power is super speed. However, Hunter tends to steal the show, and more often than not, he gets most of the action, so he's usually the one who takes all the credit. Then there's Colleen, a rough collie from the United Kingdom. Colleen is the lone female member of the team. Her specialty is martial arts, and she also has a tendency to utter random words such as dance styles and celebrity names in her battle cries. She has a romantic interest in Hunter and an obvious hatred towards Blitz. More often than not, she pretends to forget who he is along with his very existence, which adds to Blitz's annoyance. And then there's Exile, a Siberian husky from Russia. As far as I know, Exile is one of the most popular characters in the show. His powers are his great strength and his ability to shoot ice and heat beams from his eyes. His ice beams can freeze enemies, while his heat beams can burn or melt through solid matter. One of Exile's most common characteristics is his tendency to butcher the English language by saying certain catchphrases in reverse. An example would be the catchphrase, "easy as pie," like taking candy from a baby. Instead, however, Exile will say something like "easy as cake," like taking pie from a baby.
Easy as cake, like taking pie from a baby.
Yeah, what he said.
Exile is most commonly known for his catchphrase,
Don't be a weird boy.
which he repeats throughout the series and is often his favorite name-calling for Blitz. In fact, much like Colleen, Exile really seems to hate Blitz. Speaking of which, Blitz is up next for the character roll call. He's a Doberman Pinscher from Germany. His powers are his razor-sharp claws and teeth, which can slice through just about anything, even titanium. He is very jealous of Hunter being the leader, and has a bit of a crush on Colleen despite her obvious contempt for him. He also has a huge obsession for biting tushies and a liking for peppermint milkshakes, a gag that was introduced in the final episode. Blitz is known for his Arnold Schwarzenegger-like voice and for his massive ego, which tends to get on everybody's nerves.
Oh, look at me. I'm so handsome I could kiss myself. In fact, I think I will.
He is also the loser of the team who receives the most negative criticism and bashing from his teammates. In fact, he seems to be more of an object for everybody else to take out their frustrations than a teammate. Up next, we have Shag, a massive sheepdog from Switzerland. Shag is what I would like to call the Scooby-Doo of the team because of his cowardice and his tendency to cower in the face of danger. However, Shag has his uses. His fluffy white fur coat is often used as an infinite storage source from where he can pull out a large assortment of items. And he is also known for having somewhat of a fiery temper that can go off without warning if someone manages to push the wrong buttons.
Shag.
In fact, he can be quite intimidating when he's angry. And also like Scooby-Doo, Shag loves to eat, and is also the team's cook. And finally, there's Muzzle, a Rottweiler who sadly never gained a humanoid form, and forever remained in a straitjacket and muzzle throughout the entire series. He is always kept restrained at all times, and is only released at dramatically appropriate times when the team is out of options and surrounded by enemies. Before being unleashed, the Rovers utter the phrase,
Let's muzzle him.
as they remove his mask and restraints. Once unleashed, Muzzle jumps out of his straitjacket and attacks the enemies off-screen, so as to avoid horrifying younger audiences. Since Muzzle's actions are never seen on screen, it can only be assumed that he does one of two things to the enemies. He either mauls and slaughters them mercilessly, or he simply scares them away. Only one thing is for sure though, Muzzle is full of surprises. You never quite know what he's gonna do. Seriously, name another cartoon that has a powerful Rottweiler who destroys everything off screen. Well, that's all for part 1. Stay tuned for part 2 in case you're still interested. Until next time.